Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 313. I am your co-host Nathan Springer, joined by my host Leora Springer. Thank you guys for being here. It is the 21st of the 11th, 2023. Yeah, the year is moving swiftly along. Thank you, Ronnie Cakes. The year is moving very swiftly along. And there are some questions here, and we're talking about. Hello, yes, sir. You aren't tired right now after that long transit? Yeah. There are some questions right now. We're talking about trains and mass transit and how exactly that would work. The highway need to widen straight down to San Fernando, Derek says. Ronnie, stop it. The highway needs to widen straight down to Sando, Derek says, but I don't actually think that's the solution. I don't actually think that's how you solve this issue, because at the end of the day, it's a massive amount of cars that just have to filter into Port of Spain. That's just the problem. If you have 10,000 cars having to go into the few streets of Port of Spain, you are always going to get that bottlenecking problem. There's no amount of road widening you can do that will solve that issue. The issue isn't going further south. On a morning, the traffic builds up from the north going back south. It doesn't build up from the narrow roads of south coming north. So the problem isn't that the roads down south need widening per se. It's that less people need to go into Port of Spain at the same time. One person, yes, it is a lot of one person and two people a car. One person in a car having to filter into Port of Spain, having to find a park their car, secure it, jump out the car and walk to their office. It takes time to do, and every one person has to do it one at a time, going and filtering into the city. That's the problem right there. You want to deal with that? Stagger the public service. Make the public service not all have to start at 8 a.m. or thereabouts. More work from home. Decentralize more areas so that people have to go to Port of Spain less. Those are things you could do that would have real solutions on that, I think. If the PBR was more effective, people wouldn't drive that much. If public transport on a whole was more effective, people wouldn't do it as much. But the reality is, it is not. You cannot plan your schedule based on public transport. I was talking about this earlier this week. Earlier this week with this very same student that was speaking here, I was doing a bit of a testing certain runs on which would be ideal. So your boy trying this whole PTSD business. I went to South attempting to get a bus back to Central and seeing how long that is going to take. The bus was supposed to leave, I believe, at 8:30. 10:40 something. This bus left. How does one exist in a world where your transportation leaves 2.25 hours late? And I noticed something sitting on that bus, trudging away, trudging away down the main road. At least it was in air-conditioned comfort. I noticed something. It was nearly only old people and pensioners inside there. Old people who have not much to do with their day, where their schedules aren't that rigid. They could reach 2 hours later to go and talk to Miss Mildred, because, Miss Mildred ain't going anywhere. Nobody that has a serious business day can be sitting inside of that bus, because it's not going to make sense. And then, how does the bus become an alternative? Well, yes, they do get subsidized, but how does the bus become an alternative if it's unreliable? The main point of transportation is you must be reliable. I must be able to know, okay, well, I wake up at 6 a.m. on a morning to catch the 8:30 bus to reach down to Chaguanas for 10 o'clock. I know I can do that, and every morning I can plan my schedule based on that. It cannot be that every morning I enter the bus terminal and I have to ask. First up, I have to ask if the bus is working for today. And bear in mind, some of these bus prices are $4. While if you don't catch the bus, the taxi price might be what, $20 alternative? So it's not exactly an easily exchangeable something. For a school children are free to walk onto the bus. If you are a parent who isn't very financially well off, you're trying to depend on the bus to get your child to school. Someday the bus decides they're not running. That's the difference between paying $0 transport for your child and maybe $35 transport. How can that be used? Tobago bus is always on time because there is no traffic. I don't think it's only a traffic issue here in Trinidad and Tobago. That's not the only issue. And if it is a traffic issue, then put the traffic in consideration into the planning of your schedule and routes. I tried that once to take my children to Shagaramas. Waste of blasted time. I understand exactly what you mean, Nisi. That was an extremely frustrating experience. Extremely frustrating. I don't know how anyone could survive trying to use public transportation to actually seriously do business. That's insane. And then we complain about the traffic situation. I am sure there are many people who would not mind, like, to be very honest with you, the PTSC buses are not that bad. Good evening, sir. The PTSC buses are not that bad in terms of general comfort. Lots of leg room. The AC is usually pretty cold. The seats are plush. The bus is relatively clean most times. You don't get a feeling like, you're scornful to sit on these seats. It's not a bad ride. You're riding high up, looking at things around you. You feel comfortable. By and large, the bus isn't a bad ride. If I could have depended on the timeliness of that bus, I would have used it. And it's not like I don't have a vehicle and access to other vehicles. I would have used it. I don't mind. There are people who go to Port of Spain and they own cars, but they don't drive their car to Port of Spain if it's more convenient for them not to. People will do that, but if it's just not convenient, it's unreliable. One day I go to the bus terminal expecting to get a bus at a particular time, and it comes an hour and a half later. Forget that. I'm driving the next day. Traffic is bad in my neighborhood and it's really hard to get around. Maintenance is an issue. The bus shut down from time to time. Like, I don't buy that maintenance issue, Derek. Let me tell you why I don't buy that fully. Because buses that the PTSC, Public Transportation Service Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, that has access to the national coffers, that has a whole mechanic department that could hire people, that has access to the government to import parts. They couldn't maintain buses. Sold them to private owners. And Georgie Boy have that bus with retrofitted air condition, neon disco lights, 3 15-inch speakers, 8-inch surrounding each seat, blasting its way going down Mayaro swinging around the corners, and somehow Georgie Boy could maintain the whole bus. How come the whole corporation couldn't maintain that bus? And Georgie Boy could maintain it and make a profit off of this bus that was bought when Eric Williams was a boy. You all do know many of those excursion buses were all PTSC buses that the PTSC couldn't maintain. So they sold them off, and now some private person maintaining it magically. That's why I don't really buy the supervision thing. I don't really buy that it's a maintenance issue in and of itself. Georgie Boy only has one to maintain. Correct? I understand that. But are you saying it's impossible to scale up the care and maintenance that Georgie Boy puts into one? VPTSC has a whole mechanic maintenance department. I would hope that an entire department devoted to maintaining the same fleet could do better than one man. I would hope so. Can anyone here speak on that department? I can't. I've never worked PTSC. Sell PTSC and let the government pay an operation fee. Probably not a bad idea. Probably not a bad idea. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if you were to somehow sell that, and then all of a sudden the private corporation that runs that, all of a sudden they become super profitable. I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, that wasn't actually what we were intending to talk about when we started this evening, but that's not a problem. That's not a problem at all. But we'll divert back onto the news at hand, because the Prime Minister had his input to say on the whole issue of the police being possible mediators in quelling crime. And, you know, pragmatism. How many of us out here know what pragmatism means? And yesterday when we were talking, you know, we always get distracted as we go on speaking about different things. But I was speaking about different ways we could view this, where there's a pragmatic approach, and then there's what you determine to be the ideal style of behavior for this unit or whoever. Pragmatic meaning basically what works. Pragmatic is to do with what works. It's not theoretical. You're not trying to study the ideas of what might work. We're just looking literally at what works. Now, you could wonder now, with something like the alleged gang truce that the police may have brokered or may not have brokered, according to which way you look at it, in Port of Spain there, you could wonder about pragmatism, because the idea of the pragmatic approach to lessening crime would be that you want less murders, plain and simple. If the police could broker a peace deal between gangs that would facilitate less murders, in terms of looking at it through the lens of pragmatism, would that be a bad thing? Now, one of the problems with pragmatism is you end up with the issue of, does the end justify the means? And pragmatism seems to say yes, because you're looking for what works, and what works is all there is to it. It's not about looking for some theory of what is good about doing this or anything. No, just what works. So the end is supposed to justify it. But The problem is sometimes we don't know what the end might be. So if the pragmatic approach in the moment is that police might facilitate a truce between gangs and that might decrease the actual violent crimes we see in the moment, but what that does is creates a feeling, an impression of more power for the gangsters. Is that a good thing? Is it a good thing for the gangsters to now feel like the police have to come to us to negotiate with us in order to get us to do things? Even if in the moment it gives a pragmatic solution, the pragmatic solution being less murders. If we get that solution in the moment, but in the long run, what we lose is the impression that the gangsters have nearly equal power to the police. They must be brought to the bargaining table if something must be done. Are we sure that's what we want? The Prime Minister seems to have set his view in which direction he sees that. PM, no place for cops in gang deals. The Prime Minister says the police cannot and should not get involved in negotiating a truce among warring gang factions believed to be responsible for a wave of shootings and murders along the East-West corridor. Although DCP Kurt Simon had dismissed the report earlier, Dr. Rowley was asked about his thoughts on the matter at a press briefing. He said gang warfare is gang activity, which is criminal conduct. Exactly. At the end of the day, it's criminal conduct. The Parliament understands this and has allotted a significant amount of effort to codify the law to allow the law enforcement in TNT to respond to criminal conduct identified as gang activity. Now, you see, again, I remember when we previously spoke about this, someone was asking about this. Don't we have gang legislation in Trinidad and Tobago directly written with the intention to solve this issue? There seems to be unsolved issues here. If police trying to make truce with gangs, it means they know who are the gang members. Yes, obviously, POTUS, and not only who are the gang members, but what role they play in the gang also. They know who the leadership and what the leadership structure looks like. And if you know what the leadership structure looks like, isn't that exactly what the law seeks to break apart? Now, to me, and everyone says this, the police have said this also, there is a difference between what you know and what you can prove, and when it comes to having action done legally, it's about what you can prove, not about what you know. But to me, then the issue here is between the police and the politicians, the parliament, getting together and discussing, trying to figure out a way to transfer what they know into what they can prove. That's the only discussion that needs to be had. That's the main discussion. Manning tried making peace with gang leaders already. Yes, I'm familiar with that Friday Forever. But there are allegations that that wasn't really a peace meeting, but more of an identification meeting. And after the people were identified, they were dispatched with, allegedly. So, make of that what you will. Make of that what you will. How many of those of the peace meeting attendees survived through that term? That's a question to ask, just by the way. But I don't think, I think as one officer said it is accurate. I don't think it's the police job to facilitate this truce. I think this is where the gangs test their mettle. I am not speaking as somebody pro-crime, pro-criminal, or pro-gang here. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the reality of life. The reason the Italian mobs were able to survive throughout the 1900s was they were able to work within this sphere and make truces when they needed to make truces. And the reality is, even if you act with impunity because you have some police on your side, if you start killing 4 people in a group each day, somebody is going to do something about it. So if the gangs decide all on their own that they are more interested in making money than in making prison and making a casket full, then they could decide to make a peace treaty all on their own, and that's a good thing. On Trinidad and Tobago's part, if gangs decide we don't want to kill each other anymore, that's a good thing. They shouldn't need police to make that decision for them. Like, if the police broker a deal like that, the police would very likely have to facilitate a deal like that. As in, the police would have to give some kind of assurance of some favorable outcome in order to facilitate such a deal. I think what we need is transforming what we know into action. Exactly, Kuvon. And that's why I said, to me, that's a discussion between the police and the legislators, the parliament. Discuss. Try to figure out, okay, we know this information. How did we get about knowing this information? Is there some way to transfer the information that is knowledge into actionable information? Derek says, Earl, I need to clean up both St. Paul and Beetham. It overbearing now. I don't think Erla has say over that, Derek. If I'm being very honest with you, I don't think Erla has the say over that. Because St. Paul's, Beetham, East Port of Spain, the Nelson, George, Lavantil, all those areas, they have been doing what they have been doing for a long time now. For a long time now, commissioners come, commissioners go. Trinidad gang members seem too immature to uphold the peace treaty for a long period of time. Well, the truth is, Potas, probably all gang members are kind of like that. That's the nature of gangs. That's the nature of how the gangs run. But they say the peace deal is still on the table. The gangs are still okay with the peace. And you understand this from the more senior side of the gangs. Ronnie, stop it. Right there, cut it. Cut it. Before we have to mute you. You could understand it from the gang's point of view. You could understand how this thing works like that. But, you know, I was reading a story here about how we deal with crime, how the court dealt with a crime in Trinidad and Tobago. And you understand why some of these situations are exactly the way they are. Why it's so difficult for criminals to be fully dealt with in a country like ours. Put police to patrol in rural areas where crime is very high. Let's look at this story. Let's look at this story. Very interesting story. Love triangle killers freed. Woman's husband beaten, strangled. Let's dive into this very interesting story here. A love triangle between a Faizabad woman, her husband, and another man resulted in the outside man killing the woman's husband in 2008. Good night, Lana Polana. So, allegedly, the outside man killed the husband in 2008. The killing took place after Ravindra Mahathur found out that Rashid Ali began physically assaulting Ali's wife after finding out she was secretly involved in a relationship with Mahathur. That sounds a bit complicated. So, allegedly, husband find out that wife is horning him with outside man. Husband allegedly starts to beat up wife because of that. allegedly, Horneman found out and now is vexed that husband is beating up wife about Horneman relationship. Bali says, get Hornan killed, boy. Things hard out there, boy, Bali, boy. Things hard out there, boy, Bali. Life not fair. That's how it go. Life not fair. That's how it go for some people. On Friday, Mahatu and another man, Jace Mangal Singh, were both ordered to be released from prison by a High Court judge having pleaded guilty to manslaughter. Initially, they were both charged with Ali's murder, but on November 7th, the two entered into a plea deal with the office of the DPP. Based on that deal, the men would plead guilty to the lesser charge, and in exchange, they would be sentenced to a prison term with a starting point of not more than 21 years. However, while the starting point in the sentencing was 21 years, their sentences were significantly reduced when the judge applied a 1/3 deduction for their guilty pleas and took into account the time they had already spent in prison awaiting trial. When the 1/3 deductions were applied, Mangal Singh was to serve a term of 13 years and 8 months, while Mahatu was to serve 13 years and 8 months. Now, these men were released because they were already pending trial for more than 13 years. Mahatu and Mangal Singh were charged with killing Ali on May 2nd, 2008. And ultimately, they served 13 years on remand for a murder. "13 years, not even in maximum security, in remand for a murder. And now you are free to go." And bear in mind, this wasn't some wishy-washy iffy thing where they're not sure what this was, if it was pre-planned, if it may have been some kind of self-defense, something. Excuse me. He was beaten and strangled, and after he died, an attempt was made to burn his body. An autopsy report revealed there was burning and charring around his neck and over the back of his head. There were remnants of burnt paper around the neck when his naked body was found on an oil field road the next day. The allegations in this also, and I'm reading this, as we were talking about what you know versus what you can prove and all of that. The allegations of one witness in this is that one witness heard the husband saying, "Oh God, Nancy, tell the two names, don't beat me now, don't let them kill me now." So a witness basically admitted that the wife knew. Wife is free. Wife never went to prison. And two murderers, now found guilty of manslaughter, free to walk after 13 years. And the witness in this case said, he was frightened to come forward. They threatened him and said he would be a dead man if he comes forward. Listen. Witness is now in danger only 13 years later. because the DPP pled down the case. 13 years, and the people you witnessed about, you went and told in public court that they are murderers, are now free to roam. That's the legal system here in Trinidad and Tobago. Is there a witness protection program? Yes, there is. Now, I'm not sure how long witness protection lasts because the case is now over. I'm not sure if you can get witness protection in perpetuity. After 13 years, them don't want to see a jail gate. Are you sure? Are you that sure? And if there are cases like this out there, so let's say now someone was in this case and now they also had bail in between, so they weren't even in prison. It makes the whole idea of punishing crime a messy situation where very few people actually get a true punishment for their crime. But let's jump into two lighter stories here that ultimately, it's a very sad story, but a very sad story. But it tells something about crime and the culture of crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and that there seems to be a geographical nature in this crime. Laws need to be changed and enforced. More enforced than changed, I would say. More enforced than changed. And it seems to me that South people need to understand. They need to read up more when they come north, come to town to do business. Like, the country bookies come to town and get themselves in trouble. If the witness disappears without a trace, there's no way to legally link them without solid evidence. Listen to this story. Listen to this story. Barack poor man robbed trying to sell phone to man he met online. Listen, y'all, nearly every week I read 2-3 stories like this. And they nearly always go the same way. Some person from South decided that they wanted to sell something up north and went to a corner in Morva, a dead end in Beetham, something on a corner in Lavantil. Like, bro. Despite repeated warnings to members of the public to exercise caution when arranging sale transactions online, robberies have continued to occur. The latest victim was a Barack poor man who came to Port of Spain to sell a Samsung S22 Ultra cell phone valued at $4,800. The 33-year-old man went with his wife. The 33-year-old man went with his wife to Prince Street. I am not a Port of Spain geography expert, but Prince Street is a cross street, right? What streets do Prince Street cross? Charlotte, George, Nelson, and ends on Piccadilly or something up there? Like, bro, what you doing on Prince Street? With your wife, making a cash transaction while you from Barrackpore. Bro, what? As the couple arrived, they were met by two men, one of whom was armed with a gun. The man was relieved of the cell phone as well as his black G-Shock watch, which was valued at $3,200. He was later blindfolded and taken to a room and beaten about the head and face before being released. The couple later made a report at the Besson Street police station. While checks were carried out for the suspects, no one was apprehended. Like, bro. Town is not Barrackpore. It just doesn't work so. It doesn't work so. Here's another one. Another one. Puppy rescuer robbed of iPhone. Puppy rescuer robbed of iPhone. A woman who was attempting to save a puppy that had been struck by a car in East Port of Spain on Sunday was robbed while doing so. Police said that around 11:55 a.m., the 25-year-old woman from Central Trinidad, again, Central and South. Central and South, hey, Central and South people. When you go to Tongue, mind your business and come back home now, people. Tongue is not Central and South. The 25-year-old woman from Central Trinidad had parked her car at Piccadilly Street near Calvary Hill, East Port of Spain. Exited and was about to attend to a crying puppy that had been struck moments earlier by a passing car. When a bandit walked up to her and said, "Don't be scared," and robbed her of her Apple iPhone 14 Plus, valued at $8,191. He then calmly walked off. The woman then abandoned her rescue attempt, got into her car, and made a report to the Besson Street police station. The condition of the puppy remained unknown up to last night. I find this was an Express article. I find the Express was cruel to put that last line in there. The condition of the puppy remained unknown up to last night. Like, Express, what you all doing? Why you doing it? Why you doing it? But, like, what kind of bubble? What kind of bubble must you grow up in? I have to read this paragraph again. You all listen to the different parts in this paragraph. Police said that around 11:55 a.m., the 25-year-old woman. This is a 25-year-old woman. Oftentimes in culture, we may call this person still a girl. Like, if the 25-year-old females I know in my life, I often refer to them as girls still. This 25-year-old woman from central Trinidad, Blessing Megzi, from central Trinidad, had parked her car at Piccadilly Street. Like, unless you live at Piccadilly Street, there's no way there should be reference to you parking a vehicle on Piccadilly Street. Do you live there? Then no, you shouldn't be parking on Piccadilly Street. Near Calvary Hill, East Port of Spain, she parked her car there, exited, and was about to attend to a crying puppy. Like, listen, this really sounds like a TV show. Like, no way this can't be real. This, a 25-year-old woman, you not from this area. You see a random puppy crying at the side of the road in East Port of Spain and park your car on Piccadilly Street, jump out and go to do what with this puppy? Like, what was the end plan with the puppy? Puppy lives matter. Well, apparently it didn't matter, Lyndon Smith, because after Big Man jump out, when a bandit walked up to her, listen, the bandit didn't even run up. The bandit walked up to her and said, "Don't be scared." The bandit said, this bandit, like, he reads the scriptures, because that is how in the holy book, that's how the angels appear. That's how the good Lord himself appears to man. Fear not. Like, the bandit pop up with a fear not. Fear not. Fear not, young lady. But, you know, they didn't say whether he had a gun or not. Just by the way, maybe the man was unarmed and robbed her of an iPhone 14 Plus. So sis was tough in the game. Sis was tough in the game. iPhone 14 Plus valued at US $1,200. And if it was that puppy lives mattered, then after you were robbed, you would have still taken the puppy. The woman then abandoned her rescue attempt, got into her car, and made a report to the Bessemer Street police station. Listen, I don't blame the lady. I am laughing because of the calamity of the whole situation. I'm very happy that the woman is safe. I don't blame the lady for having a caring heart. I think it was unwise, but a caring heart is a wonderful thing. You know, it's a beautiful thing for women to have that tender-hearted, you know, you care about the life of an innocent puppy at the side of the road on Piccadilly Street. But your care at all times must be tempered by wisdom. At all times, your care must be tempered by wisdom. Yes, Jassy, that is exactly it. So rescue puppy, never mind, got robbed, leave puppy stranded. Yes, yes. Like if you, I'm saying this kind of facetiously, if the young lady who was robbed is watching this, I mean, no offense, but I mean, if you really loved the dogs, if you really cared about the puppy, after you already robbed of your phone, and the man walked off calmly, he didn't seem to be a threat anymore, you already lost the thing of value, well, take up the puppy and carry him. Go do what you were going to do anyhow. Why still leave the puppy? Lyndon Smith says, grew up there and I don't stop for anything. Tony says, care somewhere else. Amalab says, caring heart, she left the puppy with the rubber. Mean. For a puppy, sadly, there's a lot I will walk past because it's tongue. Ranny Cake says I wouldn't stop for a man's self. To be very honest with you, you know how they send out occasionally those online things where they see, there are bandits using crying babies. You all don't stop for the crying babies. There are bandits using those cry because of all those spooky online chain messages. A baby could be crying at the side of the road. If I find this place fishy, I am calling the police as I floor X the board. Nissy says Piccadilly, Nelson, George, Princess Streets you stay away from, even Duke and Charlotte sometimes. Listen, Nissy, I have a code. I do not go east of Charlotte. There's nothing for me east of Charlotte. Personally, I don't even go Charlotte. Like, I don't need deals that bad. I'll find the deals in Chaguanas. Chaguanas has a lot of good deals. Charlotte Street could stay right there. Charlotte Street and further east, nothing for me. There's just nothing for me there. The only thing there is drive through as you're exiting Port of Spain. Keyshawn Homer says not stopping unless it's an elderly person. I mean, even if it's an elderly person, I'd have to be in the moment to know exactly what I'd do, if I'm being very honest with you. If I'm being very honest with you, bandits get old too, eh? Exactly, I mean, age is just a number. There are bandits that could be grey. I'm a puppy. Excess of puppy. A puppy. A puppy. Keyshawn Homer says it. Yes, life, yes. I refuse to go Port of Spain unless absolutely necessary. Correct. Every country has a location that's in no-go zone area. I don't stop. The energy can be evil. I understand what you mean. I remember a couple years ago, and it still happens occasionally, but a couple years ago it was in highlight. People driving down George Street and Nelson Street getting things snatched out of their car. Right out of their car, things are being snatched. I mean, it kind of scares people out of the district. Are you surprised that people don't want to go and lime around in those areas anymore? Charlotte is where I make market, but again, you have to be smart. Listen, I find like the Charlotte Street robberies generally, they aren't generally speaking the most violent in terms of a gunman or something. It's snatch and run and that kind of stuff, but still, like. There's no okro cheap enough. There's no okro cheap enough for me to go down Charlotte Street. Like, there's good bhaji in Chaguanas. I will pay the premium price for the tomatoes inside of Massey instead of go down Charlotte, to be very honest with you. And this is why regularly I say it's not that poverty breeds crime as much as crime breeds poverty. Those areas, if you are a resident of that area, you can't get regular customers to buy things from you because the regular customers aren't coming. They aren't gonna come. Imagine you're like me. You're a little private teacher and you're living in some one of those areas and you want to open a little lessons now. A little lessons from your home. Advertising after school lessons on Nelson from 4 to 6. Come learn CXC basics in math, English, etc. Who is going to come? Yes, Nisi. Nathan, you didn't see the article where someone went to make a report of a robbery only to see the robber in the station? Yes, that happened in the east. In the east. Um, Let me see if I recall this correctly. So, allegedly, a regiment officer assigned to a station in the east took up an unmarked police vehicle. An unmarked police vehicle. Get some other men and went down and put on a walk. Robber businessman, Mafeking was it? Robber businessman and gone away. The businessman gone to make the report in the police station and ID the robber inside the police station when he went to make the report. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Imagine that. What kind of madness is that? And well, you know it's bound to be easy lockup because you are regiment. You're not part of the batch. Maybe if you were part of the batch, you might not get the lockup. But your regiment, brother regiment, take your lockup. But you real bold. How you using unmarked police vehicle going and putting down work? You jump in the police vehicle to go and put on robbery work. What kind of madness is this? That man needs to be put under the jail, man. That's some insanity. Any further questions or comments inside of the live before we dive out? I have no dealings of east of Charlotte Boulevard. I don't blame you at all. I don't blame you at all. Like, dealings for what? Dealings for what? And I'm not... It's not that I stigmatize every resident of the area. I understand there are many nice people that may be there and etc, etc, etc. But the risk just isn't worth it. For the average person, it's too much of a risk. Why would they face such a risk? For what benefit? Honestly, I value the nostalgia because I have good memories. Too risky now. Yeah. The youths of today is different from long ago youths. That's correct. That's a fact. 100% true. 100% true. Like, if I were, I'm thinking if you're in these areas, some of those petty robberies, you would think all they do is nasty your name. Like, do you really need that extra phone to survive? Are you going to really get that much extra from that phone? All you're doing is nastying the name of your community, but alas, they don't care. They don't care. And that's kind of to circle back, make the full circle with the song about the well song. To some extent it's people who don't have a care about their community that do things like this. If you have no care for your community, if you have no kind of loyalty to your in-group, well, and them is the men breeding plenty woman. Yep. How often you hear a gang-related homicide? According to the police, it was gang-related, and the boy was under 25, and you hear he was the father to 2 children, father to 3 children, father to 4 children. Some boy under 25 that was killed in a gang-related homicide, and he's already the father to a small goal side. What madness is this? That's the cycle continuing. All right, people, that's all I have for now. I hope you educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. This has been the Mindful Live, and I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which will be tomorrow evening, Wednesday, starting at 9:30. We're starting 9:30 tomorrow, so don't look out for me at 9. It's 9:30 tomorrow. I will see you again. I will see you then. Until then, people, hold it on. Be well. If you have something to say, drop a comment over there looking at this on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't and you're still looking at this over an hour into this over on YouTube there, well done. Thank you. So you can feel free to subscribe to Nathan Springer there if you are not subscribed. And I will see you guys again tomorrow. Peace. Laters.